I don't sleep much when I'm on the road, which isn't a problem anymore because whatever used to separate day from night inside me, I think it's broken. I was sent to DC in March for a federal facilities audit related to records management and secure storage compliance. Scintillating work, I know, but I was trained for that precise regulation set. And when they needed someone for the National Archives on short notice, I accepted. I'd done site visits to federal records centers before, Philadelphia, Fort Worth, but this was the archives, the A1 tier, the main facility on Constitution Avenue. Being in that building late at night when most of the lights are off and the air's dry from the preservation systems feels like trespassing in history itself. Nothing in there is really off. Even the silence feels like it's on some kind of preservation schedule. Officially, we weren't auditing classified holdings. Those are in restricted vaults, different teams. But the building was so radiated with security checkpoints and time-scheduled access routes that moving from one wing to another was like crossing layers of protocol. I started noticing the times first. The timestamps on room entry logs, man-trap doors have uniform credential readers, were off by a few seconds between the logs and my own watch. I even checked my phone against atomic time. 8 seconds slow on Monday, 9 on Tuesday, then back to 7 somehow. But it was only on doors between Subbasement 2 and the East Records Chamber, always down that same corridor past the map room. I flagged it with physical security. They said the delay sounded like BPI drift from the turnstile encoders, but the audit template had a timing discrepancy field, so I documented it and moved on. You learn not to chase every anomaly. The government breathes in paperwork and breathes out mistakes. I was staying at the Hilton on Connecticut and T, up in DuPont Circle. After rubbing old paper for 10 hours a day, standing under intermittent lighting that buzzed with a kind of amnesia, I'd walk back through the circle, past the tiny triangular parks where panhandlers drifted between marble plinths and protected LGBTQ slogans carved into stone. The city's louder at night than I remembered. Everything here says you're being watched, but it's not a threat exactly. It's more like a protocol, a system you didn't realize you were part of. That feeling started to build around the 4th day. I kept catching myself walking the same loop inside the archives. Vestibule 1, then the Roosevelt Rotunda, past the secure shelving units labeled RDT 54A through C. My own checklist didn't demand that exact route. I thought I was optimizing for distance. But when I reviewed my inspection notes, I saw I was observing the same units multiple times from slightly different angles, even re-photographing the same retention boxes, date tabs from 1974 through 1981, migration clearance forms, all consistent. Nothing unusual, except the repetition. On Thursday morning, I met with a digital archives technician. Kayla, mid-30s, wore rubber-soled flats and a lavender scarf, even in the fluorescent chill. She walked me through the data deacquisition protocols, then paused and said, "You've been in the basement stacks a lot, right?" I said, "Yes." She hesitated and said, "Don't use your phone down there." I asked if there was RF interference or sensitive equipment. She shook her head. "Just don't. Things show up in photos sometimes, not things that are there." She looked at me like she regretted saying it. That night I left around 9:20 p.m. and walked west down Constitution. The air was sharp with ozone from recent rain and passing headlights through sliding pools of light across the sidewalk. I felt like I needed to re-watch the day from the inside, like I hadn't witnessed it properly the first time. It was on Friday, late afternoon, around 4:50, that I triggered an automatic complaint when my badge logs showed I swiped into sub-basement 2 twice within the same minute, with no record of exiting in between. The system doesn't permit that. Physical security emailed me. I drafted a clarification, said the reader sometimes double logs. They asked for the internal timestamp from my phone. When I checked the camera roll to match the time, I'd been photographing microfilm labels. The photos showed black frames. Not darkness, just a perfect void. No JPEG compression signature, no light bleed. Almost like someone had rendered a blank image in Photoshop and exported it with no EXIF data. Except these had metadata, and the GPS tag was wrong. It pointed to the Hirshhorn Museum. I haven't even stepped inside the Hirshhorn. That night I stayed in, tried to write up overdue reports. My laptop fan started cycling up randomly and then stopped altogether, like it forgot how to spin. Even with the bedroom lights off, the television in the corner, the hotel's default LG set kept emitting a faint amber flicker every 15 seconds, like it was powering on, but thinking better of it. I unplugged it. The outlet was warm to the touch. Warm, not hot. Electrical warm. I went to the front desk the next morning and changed rooms. They didn't ask why. On Saturday, I arrived at the archives before it opened to the public. The building wasn't technically closed to employees, but I had to sign a weekend authorization ledger at the guard booth. I took the same route. Sub-basement 2, East Wing. As I passed compact shelving unit ST-811, I heard something like the low chirr of a phone left on silent vibrate, except it repeated, like breathing. I stopped. The air felt gelled, ripples in it almost, like suction with no source. I took out my phone and lifted it for a photo. Screen froze mid-frame. Not an error, complete suspension. The capture app didn't crash. It hovered in that half stage where your reflection flattens behind the digital viewfinder and you don't know if your image will be saved or not. I tapped. Nothing. Put it away. 5 more steps and I saw it. A facing panel on the shelving unit. Shelf ST-812B, slightly ajar. That shouldn't happen. Units are checked nightly. This was an air control breach. I walked up, palms dry now, light overhead buzzing distinctly out of sync with the others, more pulsing than humming. The door had been jammed open by a record box, a pale gray archival carton labeled with acid-free ink. Exeek, Chorus P, missing, 1979 to 1980, unre-T. Normally those boxes are numbered. This one wasn't. No barcode, no sequence ID. I reached down to lift it out and felt, not resistance but drag, like the air around the box was molasses, like 2 seconds elongated themselves across the fingers. I lifted the lid. Inside, nothing. Not literal nothing. Sheets of gold-edged paper, perfectly stacked, each labeled in neat block lettering. Archived, 1983, deleted, 1983, restored. The last field was left blank. The handwriting was familiar, but I couldn't place it. I ran my fingernail under one edge. The paper didn't bend, didn't flex. It was warmer than the air. I closed the lid. Back in the security office, I reported the open panel. They made a note. No one asked to see the box. Surveillance was reviewed. Footage from both corridor cams showed me walking that hallway twice. In both passes, I was alone. But the timestamp discrepancy was 19 minutes. One version of me holds the phone. The other tucks it into my jacket. The guard, an older man with paper-dry skin and a Cleveland cap, said, "Happens more since they upgraded the RF shielding. Don't trust the footage too much." Then he looked at me and added, "They run overlapping clocks down here. Real time and record time. Record time changes when it's rearranged." I walked north after that, all the way up to Adams Morgan. I needed people around me. Laughing voices, smell of bad pizza, energy that doesn't calcify. But even there, something was wrong with glass. Any window pane I walked past showed me a step behind myself. Just barely. So slight you'd mistake it for a lighting artifact until your reflected gate sinks off by half a beat. I tested 6 different storefront windows. Same thing. I held my phone up to record it. The footage played normal. My last day, I used the freight elevator, the old one near Vault C, to retrieve a signed compliance form from Kayla's office. The elevator has an open mesh door so you can watch the shafts of fluorescent light slip past like vertebrae. I wrote it down alone, floor indicator flickering between 1B and 2B. Except that in the middle, between floors, it stopped. Not abruptly, it just finished descending. But the door didn't open. Timer light inside counted. 1 second, 2, 3. I checked my watch. Still ticking. 47 seconds in, the lift resumed and reached 2B. The door rattled open. I stepped out. The corridor was fine at first, then quiet in a way that's impossible, that constricts the edges of things before you realize sound has stopped fully, not muted, not filtered, but absent. I saw my own footprints ahead of me in the floor dust, heel depressions consistent with my stride. But I hadn't walked that way yet. I stood over them and felt a rising instability in my balance, as though the light was projecting space wrong. I found Kayla's office unoccupied. On her desk, one printed email, deletion freeze. No recipient, just body text. Query restored assets before EOY. System rollback, no longer stable. We are near version loss threshold. I folded it and slid it into my folder. It was gone by the time I returned to the front lobby. Not missing. Vanished. The folder had no crease marks. I asked Kayla about it the next morning by phone, but the number rang to an out-of-service tone. No voicemail. In the airport, while waiting to board, I looked at my photos again to draft one final report. 3 images had added themselves since Friday. They looked like records inventory scans at first. Angled images of archival cartons on stacks. But the boxes all bore the same label. Restored, 2024. Restored, 2024. Restored, 2024. Same date, 3 formats, same handwriting. Mine. It's been a month now. I'm back in Chicago, working out of the regional office, and I don't take client calls unless they're scheduled. I don't answer unknown numbers. Every few nights, I see that amber flicker again in the corner of my bedroom. No TV in here, no plugged-in monitor. Just the flicker, the one from the Hilton. I timed it the other night. Uniform interval, 00 or 15. Every cycle. I cleaned out my phone storage and wiped my cloud backups. Bought a new number. It followed. Last week, an envelope arrived with no return address. The postage print was a faded stamp from 1981. Not reproduction, actual period print. Inside, one photograph. Me. Standing in front of a shelving unit marked ST-812, holding a gray box. My eyes closed, mouth half open. In the background, a shadow of someone else. Taller, no visible face, one hand tensed around the frame of the shelving unit. I looked down at the photo under bright light to scan the ink code along the bottom. Same code used by the Kodak photo processor at the Hirschhorn. I haven't made another report. I don't sleep more than 2 or 3 hours. Something is looping. Something I triggered without understanding its version control. And with every day that passes, I feel less certain that I ever left the archives. Not truly. And less confident these documents they keep restoring belong to history at all. Some of them feel recent, familiar, like memory retyped in someone else's font.